This is a story I've tried to forget. It's a terrifying experience that still sends chills down my spine whenever I think about it. It's not a typical scary story you hear around a campfire or read in a book. There are no ghosts, no monsters lurking in the dark. This is something much more real, much more terrifying, the kind of horror that can only come from human beings. It's the kind of story that shakes you to your core and leaves scars that last forever. This is a true account of something that happened when I was 12 years old, something I can never forget. I had just moved to my dad's when I was 10. My parents had separated, and I found myself in a new town, a new home, with new people. At that age, everything felt out of place, like I was walking in a world that wasn't mine. I didn't know anyone in the area, and I spent a lot of time feeling like an outsider. The only people I knew were my dad's friends, one of whom had a family I eventually got to know a little better. They were a single mother and her 3 kids. It wasn't much of a connection at first. I didn't even really click with the kids, but I did meet a girl who was around 2 years older than me. Her name was Sarah. At the time she was 12, which seemed like a huge age difference to me at 10, but over time we got to know each other. We weren't close friends by any means, but we spent time together in the same circles. We shared a few mutual friends, and I began to spend more time at her house, mostly because she lived nearby, and it made sense. There were moments when we connected, but mostly, Sarah was just someone I knew, someone I'd see around, someone I'd talk to once in a while. We never had sleepovers or went on trips together, but there was a camaraderie there. We had mutual friends who made it so that we were thrown together more often than not. I didn't know her well enough to really understand her life, but I knew she had a single mom who worked a lot, and I knew she had 2 younger siblings, one of whom was a boy around my age, and another younger brother who was about 8 at the time. It's strange how the people who are closest to you, who you think you know the best, are often the ones who are the hardest to truly understand. That was Sarah. In hindsight, I realized that the tragedy that befell her didn't just happen because of one bad decision. It wasn't the work of a single, twisted individual. It was a perfect storm of circumstances, a series of miscalculations, unfortunate timing, and a haunting evil that lurked where no one expected it. It all started the night my friend Rob and I went to Sarah's house. Her mum was at work, and the 3 of us were hanging out at her place. This was nothing unusual. We'd all spent time at Sarah's house before. But this night was different. A dark and twisted fate was about to unfold, and we couldn't have known. Looking back, it almost feels like it was meant to happen, like there was no way to avoid it. I can't explain it, but sometimes, when you look at a series of events, it feels like it was written long before we ever got there. Rob and I arrived a little after dinner. The house was quiet, as expected. Sarah's mom worked long shifts, and I remember her telling us that she wouldn't be home until late. We were alone in the house, just the 3 of us, playing video games and talking like we always did. For a while, everything felt normal. We were just kids having fun. The night was young, and we didn't think twice about what was going on around us. That's when it happened. I don't remember exactly when the knock came, but I remember the sudden chill that spread through me when I heard it. It was just a soft knock at first, then a louder, more insistent one. It startled Sarah, who got up from the couch and walked to the door. She was calm, almost too calm. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just assumed it was her mum coming home early from work. Sarah always told me her mum had a certain way of knocking, and I never thought twice about it. But Rob, who was sitting next to me on the couch, seemed uneasy. He immediately shot up from his seat and made a beeline for the window. I remember him whispering, "I shouldn't be here." His face was pale and his hands were trembling. as he pulled open the window and disappeared into the night, running down the street toward his house without another word. I watched him leave, confused, but then I turned my attention back to Sarah. She opened the door, and as soon as she did, I felt it. A shift in the air. Something was wrong. I couldn't explain it at the time, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Sarah, unaware of the danger, smiled and greeted the person at the door. I didn't recognize the woman standing there. She looked off. There was something in her eyes, something unsettling. She wasn't tall, but her presence felt immense, as if she was somehow larger than life. Her face was pale, too pale, and her hands weak.